for joining this evening's telephone town hall with Congressman Seth Moulton. My name is Robin, and I'll be moderating the call this evening. During tonight's call, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. This is an interactive call, and we are looking forward to addressing your questions. To ask a question, please press *3 now or any time during this call. You may also sign up for our newsletter by pressing *6 at any time during the call. Again, if you would like to ask the Congressman a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad now. And if you'd like to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6. Now, without further delay, I'd like to turn this evening's telephone town hall over to Congressman Seth Moulton. Congressman, you are live and the floor is yours, sir. Please go ahead.
Robin, thank you very much, and good evening. This is Congressman Seth Moulton, and I hope you'll stay on the line and join me for the telephone town hall tonight. If you've joined one of these before, welcome back. If you have not participated in a telephone town hall before, I'm so glad to have you here. At any time, you can press *3 to submit a question. We'll get to as many as we can tonight. You can also press *6 to subscribe to my newsletter. As we wait just a few moments for more people to join the line, and as we log your questions, remember again, you can press *3 to ask a question. I want to share a few updates. It has been exactly 1 month since President Trump took office. Since then, his administration has unleashed a nonstop barrage of executive actions. Now, I'm not here to lecture anyone about how to feel about President Trump. I'm sure there are plenty of folks listening who voted for the president. But as a Democrat who believes in freedom, honesty, and the rule of law, and as a veteran who took an oath to protect our Constitution, I'm extremely concerned about how this administration is carrying out its priorities. I share this concern with a lot of folks across the North Shore and across the country, and I know a lot of Republicans who share this alarm as well. Over the past few weeks, my office has been inundated with calls and emails from concerned constituents. So before we get to your questions, and remember, press *3 to ask one, I want to address some of these concerns and how I believe we should move forward. President Trump won the votes of 77 million Americans by promising to make life better. He said he would bring down the price of eggs, bring down inflation, lower the cost of housing, bring peace to the Middle East, and end the Ukraine war on day one. Unfortunately, he's broken every one of those promises. And instead of focusing on making life better for every American, the president and shadow president Elon Musk have focused on targeting anyone who he perceives is against him, flagrantly ignoring the Constitution and the rule of law in our free democracy. I just returned from Europe, the Munich Security Conference, where he is undermining the peace and stability of NATO that the greatest generation of Americans fought to establish after World War II. And with widespread tariffs, he is playing a game of chicken with our economy. Communities across the North Shore are feeling the impacts already. Today, I visited the North Shore Community Health Center and sat down with fishermen and lobstermen in Gloucester. What I've heard across the board is that Trump's policies are working against them, not for them. And the chaos he's creating with his administration makes it very hard to do business and take care of each other. And every day we're hearing from towns and organizations who are in the dark about whether they'll actually receive the federal grants they've been promised. While it's true that Democrats have very few levers of power in Washington right now, we do have some. And something I learned in the Marines is that you don't win by hiding, you have to be first in the fight. So first, we have to recognize the fight and publicly hold the administration accountable. We already saw this work with the funding freeze. We're taking action publicly and behind the scenes, leveraging my relationships with Democratic leadership and my Republican colleagues. This also means using my vote strategically. Republicans are about to drive us to the brink of a government shutdown again. They'll probably need Democratic votes to bail them out. And we'll show strong, decisive leadership in doing so. In the longer term, I've also been out front in reforming the Democratic Party. Clearly, Democrats have lost touch with the majority of Americans. By definition, that's how we lost the election. So we have a lot of work to do. We have to get out and listen to Americans again. Stop canceling people. Stop refusing to even debate contentious issues and address the real problems we all face every day. Democrats need to show Americans that their government can and should work for them. That means recognizing that we need to make government more efficient and rein in spending, and then presenting a better plan to do it than simply destroying everything like Musk is doing right now. One of the first bills I passed in Congress was to help veterans get care more efficiently from the VA, where I am a patient myself. Everyone in America should have the opportunity to work hard and get ahead, and we need to build a system where that's possible. I'd like to go further. Let's get people, especially kids, away from their screens and encourage national service. We need to think big and bold again when it comes to how our country is connected. Bridge the divide between blue cities and red states or coastal states and flyover country. That's why I'm such a champion of high-speed rail, because it has been shown to reduce regional inequality, literally tying our country back together again. Just imagine what Springfield's economy would look like if it were 40 minutes from South Station. In spite of the chaos, I'm also committed to my daily responsibilities as your representative in Washington. I recently introduced a bipartisan bill that would ease the tax burden on low-income active duty service members and their families. Earlier this month, celebrated securing the largest ever grant for the town of Nahant for flood mitigation. Okay, it looks like we've already got several questions in the queue, so I'll just say one more thing. I want all of my constituents, every one of you on the call tonight, to know that my office will be here to help you through it all. We've been through this before, and we'll work through it again. And my dedicated team of caseworkers stands ready to help you with any number of issues, from the IRS to passports to Social Security, the Veterans Administration. Call us and tell us how we can help. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or someone who doesn't vote, doesn't ascribe to a party, I work for you. My team works for you every single day, and I'm proud to do so.
Thank you, Congressman. Reminder, folks on the call, this is an interactive call, and we are looking forward to addressing your questions. If you would like to ask a question, please press *3 now on your telephone keypad. You can press it now or at any time during the call. You may also sign up for the Congressman's newsletter by pressing *6. Congressman, your first question comes from Kathy, and Kathy asks, how is Congress protecting our democracy?
Cindy, thank you very much. Look, Congress is controlled by Republicans, both the Senate and the House. And Republicans, frankly, need to find the courage to stand up for the Constitution, for the rule of law, and be willing to push back against the president. That's the whole point of Congress, right? We have this three-part government so that the different parts, the judiciary, the legislative branch, and the executive branch, can balance each other out and be a check on each other's power. But Congress, under this Republican leadership, is not doing that with the president. The president is literally breaking the law in the way that he is carrying out some of his priorities, like the way that Elon Musk, someone who is completely unelected, has just been allowed to slash funding that requires a vote of Congress. So you would expect Congress would say, whoa, that's our job. Stop. We need to handle this according to the Constitution. But Republicans refuse to do that. The definition of political courage isn't standing up to the other party. It's standing up to your own. And that's what's lacking in Congress today. So we need to do this. We need to provide oversight. And one opportunity for Democrats to weigh in will be with the March shutdown fight. It looks like Republicans are probably going to drive us to the brink and possibly shut down the government. They control everything in Washington, and yet they can't get their own extremists in line. So we need to use our votes strategically because they'll probably ask us to bail them out. And what I'm going to say is, look, I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to bail you out on the condition that you start doing your job. that you hold the administration accountable to the rule of law, and that Congress actually uses the authority granted to us in the Constitution. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you, Congressman. Next question comes from Nanny, and this was submitted online. Sir, how are you going to control Trump? When will Democrats stand up to him?
Look, Nanny, I am also frustrated by the lack of effective action. There's only so much we can do when we lost the election across the board. By the way, that's one of the reasons I'm working so hard to reform the Democratic Party, to say we've got to stop losing elections, and that means we've got to change. So that work is incredibly important to ensuring that we can win back the House at the very least 2 years from now and actually have a real check, a real lever of power against the president. But in the meantime, I think there are some things we're figuring out how to do. And as I mentioned in answer to Cassie's question, the coming fight over the so-called reconciliation budget package will, I think, show the resolve and unity of Democrats against this administration's, the tactics the administration is using to carry out its agenda. We're not going to stand idly by when they just slash and burn Medicaid, all just to raise revenue to cut taxes for the wealthy, and also cut out incredibly important federal services that we all depend upon. I talked to someone today who just needed to get an ID card renewed at Hanscom Air Force Base. He stood in line for 3.5 hours with his wife because Elon Musk had sent home so many employees. That's not government efficiency, standing in line for 3.5 hours to get your ID card renewed. So we need to do better. I've sent dozens of oversight letters about a whole range of issues, and I've been urging my colleagues, I've been literally doing that tonight, just before I got on this call, to join me in these efforts to hold the administration accountable, because that's Congress's job. So we are working, but the truth is we don't have a lot of power. Elections have consequences, and that's why some of the most important work I'm doing is reforming the Democratic Party so we can start winning elections again.
Thank you, Congressman. Your first caller is Jim from Wayland. Jim, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Congressman Moulton. The NIH is suffering massive cuts or threatened massive cuts, none of which has been mandated. In fact, I think the Congress specifically forbids the administration from making these kinds of cuts. So the question is, what kind of resistance can the Congress provide?
Well, first of all, Jim, you're absolutely right. Massachusetts is literally a national leader in medical innovation. In 2024 alone, our state received nearly 6,000 NIH grants, totaling $3.5 billion. That's 9.3% of the National Institutes of Health funding. So we get an outsized share of this money because we're doing an outsized share of the path-breaking research that allows innovations in medical care, this kind of stuff that's keeping us all alive. So, look, the short answer is yes. If the Republican majority would stand up to this lawless president, then Congress would have the power to prevent the cuts. We should have that power. It's in the Constitution that we have that power. But when Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate just abrogate it and say we're not even going to take this on, there's only so much that Democrats can do. It would take just 3 House Republicans to join with Democrats to form a new majority in Congress to derail this complete abrogation of duty. And I've joined the entire Massachusetts delegation in calling for the Trump administration to reverse course. I'm hoping that we can get some Republicans from other Republican states that are affected by these cuts as well to join us in this effort. I co-signed a letter to acting director of the NIH urging him to stand up to the Trump administration and make sure that he takes immediate action where he can to stop this. So we're going to do what we can, both behind the scenes and in public. But you're absolutely right. Massachusetts will take a huge hit if Trump and Musk succeed in making these cuts to the NIH. And we're all going to take a hit when the medical innovations we're producing today aren't there to save our lives and our kids' lives tomorrow.
Thank you, Congressman. Folks on the call, this is an interactive call. We're looking forward to hearing from you, to addressing your questions. To ask a question, please press *3 now on your telephone keypad. Congressman, your next question is from Kristen of Beverly. Kristen, please go ahead and ask your question. You are live on the call.
Hi, Kristen.
You're live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question. Sir, I'm going to go ahead and ask Kristen's question on her behalf. She asks, do you believe we are in a constitutional crisis, and what are you doing about it, and what can citizens do?
Well, Kristen, that's a good question because we're damn close. I mean, if we're not in a constitutional crisis today, we're awfully, awfully close. I mean, look, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, is a convicted felon. We've never had that before. He's flagrantly breaking the law. He said many times himself, he doesn't care. You know, remember when he said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and he would be fine? Well, today he's threatening to disobey court orders. His administration, Musk and him, are disobeying court orders. Last night he tweeted about himself as a king. He said, "Long live the king," and then posted a picture of him with a crown. Republicans usually say they believe in the Constitution and then the checks and balances that come with that, but we're not really seeing that in action from Congress today. And let's not also forget that this conservative Supreme Court, a big portion of which was appointed by Donald Trump, has helped expand Trump's power. Their shameful presidential immunity ruling, basically saying that Trump can be a king because he is above the law, is to me just fundamentally against American values. I mean, it just doesn't make sense if you understand what our country is all about. So, look, Democrats are going to continue going to the mat for our communities and the rule of law. We're going to be doing what we can. What I would say to you as citizens is, stay engaged, speak up, make sure your friends and neighbors understand what's at stake here, because everyone lives in their own social media world these days and doesn't necessarily watch the same news channel like we used to every evening to get the news. People are living in worlds where they have different sets of facts. And you simply don't hear this story about how Trump is violating the law, even though it's just the facts. You don't hear that if you're tuning into Fox News. You don't hear that if you're on a conservative Twitter feed or conservative Instagram. So a role that we can all play is just very politely, and I mean that sincerely, politely telling our friends and neighbors what's going on. And I think that's important work that we can all do to strengthen our democracy.
Thank you, Congressman. Folks, we did mention earlier in the call that this is an interactive call, so we'd like to ask you a poll question, if we may. The question is, do you think President Trump's policies will make your life better? Please press 1 on your telephone keypad if your answer is yes. Please press 2 on your telephone keypad if your answer is no. I'm going to repeat the question for our listeners. Do you think President Trump's policies will make your life better? Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Our next question is from Darian. Darian is calling from Salem. Darian, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, good evening, Congressman.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm all right. I've been in the medical field for 35 years. I worked in the emergency room, I worked on an ambulance, and I teach. And I have never seen our country in so much turmoil because two people want to take over and want to be dictators. Elon Musk comes from South Africa, and now he's coming here, and he's just wiping out everything that our founding fathers had worked for over 250 years. He's cutting everything, and I'm pretty sure he's going to cut the healthcare system. Now, me working in the emergency room and working on the ambulance, I see several people come there just for basic health care. How long is this going to last before it's totally upside down?
Well, look, it's a good question, and I agree with you. I've never seen the country like this. I mean, one of the things I've heard from some former members of Trump's first administration, people who worked very closely with him at very senior positions, is that Trump really is a big divider. I mean, you don't hear him talk about bringing the country together. You always hear about him attacking his political enemies. He said that some of his political enemies, as he calls them, should be put in prison. I mean, that's what Putin does. That's what Vladimir Putin does, not what American presidents do. You never hear him talking about bridging the divide and bringing America together. It's always one group versus the other. It's always an enemy, just like Vance was talking about the enemy within. So this is a very divisive president at a time when we know the country's already polarized, so we need leaders who can bring us together. Now, some people will complain about Biden and say he didn't do enough to bring us together. At least he tried. At least he talked about it. At least he said this was important. We're not hearing any of that from Trump. And it is ironic. You brought up the fact that Elon Musk is from South Africa. I mean, look, we're an amazing country of immigrants, and some of the greatest companies in American history have been built by immigrants. And Elon Musk has obviously found a lot of success in building companies himself. It is ironic, though, that an article in the Washington Post just came out that documented the fact that Elon Musk is almost certainly an illegal immigrant. So at the time that Trump is going up there, dividing many of our communities with these mass deportations, often without even really checking people's background to make sure that they're here illegally, he's got an illegal immigrant sitting behind the Oval Office desk. It's really unbelievable. So I share a concern, and I don't know when it's going to stop. But one thing that will help is if Democrats win back some imbalance of power in 2026. That's why that work's so important.
Thank you, Congressman. Your next question comes from Edward of Beverly. Edward, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
I read an excellent article by Dexter Filkins in the New Yorker about the challenges our military is having in recruitment and maintaining the readiness of our forces. Later that day, I saw on the news that Secretary Hegseth is ordering 8% annual cuts for the next 5 years to the Pentagon budget. It seems like a real disconnect here. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
It's a huge disconnect, and it's a huge disconnect even within the administration. Because at some point last week, this is a true story. I was actually literally on my way from Capitol Hill to Andrews Air Force Base to get on a plane to go to the Munich Security Conference, which is one of the most important national security conferences in the world. It's where Vance gave this infamous speech. It's where we work to strengthen NATO and reassure our allies and coordinate them with them about our own national security. And I was catching up on the news on the way there and was reading about how Trump said he's kind of siding with House Republicans when they want to raise the DOD budget by $100 or $150 billion. That's a lot of money. You could do a lot. You could build a lot of high-speed rail with $100 billion, and they want to raise the budget by that. So as I'm reading these articles, I get a text from a friend who says, I can't believe that Trump wants to cut the Pentagon's budget. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm just reading today's news or yesterday's news that he wants to raise the budget. Now he's saying he wants to cut it. And now, of course, the Secretary of Defense has said the same thing. Well, it wouldn't be the first time that the Secretary of Defense, someone who's brand new to the job, has already totally reversed what he said one day with what he says the next. But the reality is with this chaos, we just don't know what they intend to do. There are a lot of Republicans in Congress who are encouraging the president to raise defense spending, but his own Secretary of Defense says he wants to cut it. This chaos isn't good for anyone. It's not good for our allies. It's not good for our enemies who look at us and say, well, I don't know, maybe this is a good time to attack America because they're obviously in total disarray. And it certainly isn't good for our troops. We need to support our troops at this incredibly dangerous time in the world, and we're not doing that. Now, let me say one other thing, though. in the 10 years I've been in Congress, I have also been a consistent critic of fraud, waste, and abuse at the Pentagon. And I've said that we need to modernize our military. And if we do so smartly, we can also probably save some money in the process. Why is that? Because drones cost a lot less than an aircraft carrier. They cost a lot less to buy, and they cost a lot less to operate. One human can operate several dozen drones. An aircraft carrier requires about 4,000 or 5,000 people. So there are a lot of cost savings to be found in modernizing our military to meet today's threats. That's about national security, but it's also about saving taxpayer dollars in the process. And if that's what they were planning to do, I'd be all for it. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're talking about. They're just cutting people off and sending them home at a time when it's a very perilous place in the world. So we got a lot of work to do to hold them accountable, and I'm working behind the scenes with Republicans on the Armed Services Committee to do so. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. Your next question comes from Ellen of Bedford. Ellen, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Ellen.
Ellen,
you're
there?
live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question.
I'm live right now?
You are.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, my gosh, I already gave my question before. I apologize. Hi, thanks for the town meeting. Basically, no disrespect, but what are you going to actively do to secure Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for America? Because we are all very gravely concerned. Thank you.
Well, Ellen, first of all, you should be gravely concerned. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Trump administration has made very clear that they're willing to cut these things. They've already proposed a whole bunch of Medicaid cuts. People don't know how important Medicaid is to Massachusetts. Some people think that Medicaid is only for the very, very poor. Let me tell you, 36% of Massachusetts kids are on Medicaid. They count on Medicaid for schooling, for health care. Medicaid is incredibly important. Literally 1 out of 3 kids in the state relies on it. So these are vital programs that millions of Americans count on every single day. And we need to make sure that we do everything we can to keep them in place. But look, the reality is that Republicans are able to do this. I mean, they can make these cuts because they control the House, the Senate, and the White House. The one thing I will say is that these cuts are going to start hitting red states too. And so one of the things I'm doing is really trying to make it clear, not just to my fellow Democrats, not just to my constituents here in Massachusetts, but to Republican colleagues, that these cuts are going to hurt their people too. And they have an obligation to their own constituents to look out for them. So we're going to hear more about this in the coming weeks when the Republicans talk more about their budget. But I got to tell you, this is a real concern.
Thank you, Congressman. Just a bit ago, we did ask a poll question, and we want to share those results with our audience. We asked, do you think President Trump's policies will make your life better? The response that we got, 94% of you responded, no, you do not feel that Trump's policies will make your life better. 6% of you responded yes. Our next question comes from Jim. Jim, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Jim.
Hi, did you say from Burlington?
Go right ahead, Jim.
I think you did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's right, Jim. Go ahead.
Congressman, thank you. A comment and a question. You had mentioned before about what we as citizens can do. I want to go deeper into that. You know, I'm 70 years old. I marched against the Vietnam War. Marching is great, but it took us 10 years. I voted. Didn't work out. So in addition to engaging, it's hard when they're just talking to a wall a little bit, but what else can I do? What can we do? And are there places we can send, you know, like ACLU or Indivisible? What more can we do? It'll help the cause and also make us feel less powerless. And the second thing is a comment. I'm hoping the Supreme Court, and what your thoughts are, will stop a lot of this. And you haven't mentioned that yet. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. Appreciate you calling in and asking this question. This question, because a lot of people are asking this question around the country, and I hear it myself almost every day. Look, some of the organizations you mentioned. I mean, we can't get into politics too much on this call, but look, we got to win in 2026. Restore some balance here. You might check out Serve America and the work that we're doing there to try to get some veterans elected. And let me talk about this as a veteran. You know, when I was deployed to Iraq, fighting in a war that I had a lot of disagreements with, there were certainly good days and bad, but we got through the hardest days by taking care of each other. And I think there's a lesson in that for what's going on today. You know, we're all so frustrated, we're wringing our hands, we're asking what we can do. Don't lose sight of the fact that what this administration is doing with its cuts and lawlessness is hurting a lot of people in our community. And so there's work that we need to do just right here at home to help each other out. And hopefully by helping each other out, we can also help educate some of our fellow citizens about what's going on here. I think that's really important. So take care of yourself, your family, your friends, and take care of our community. And I think with that foundation, then, you know, we're going to be more effective at organizing when it comes time for the next election cycle, at just building awareness of what's going on, because some people are just living in a bubble where they say, look, Trump's fulfilling his campaign promises. What do we have to argue with? He was a democratically elected president. I mean, I hear that, but people need to understand the way he's going about this. You know, I agree there's a problem with immigration at the southern border. I agree the federal government could be more efficient and effective. I agree that I want to see an end to the war in Ukraine. But I don't want to just lawlessly deport millions of people, wreck our economy, and wreck our communities in the process. You know, I don't want to see the war in Ukraine end on Russia's terms. It's unbelievable we even have to say that. But Trump is literally siding with Russia here. And yes, I want to see the government be more efficient, but I don't want to see the government slashed and burned. So you can't get your tax return. You can't get care at the VA because literally all these people have just been fired, right? I mean, so we got to acknowledge that, you know, that Trump was elected, but people need to understand the way he's going about this stuff is against the law, and it's dangerous, and we got to make sure that people are engaged for the next election. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. Just a bit ago, folks, we asked you a poll question. We have a second question, and we truly appreciate your response and your participation. Our second question, we would like to know, where do you get your news, social media or traditional media? Please press 1 on your telephone keypad for social media, press 2 for traditional media. Again, we'd love to know, where do you get your news, social media or traditional media? Press 1 for social media. Please press 2 for social media. Congressman, your next question comes from Henry. Henry, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Henry.
Hey, Henry.
Hi, thank you very much. I could not be happier with the representation that we from Massachusetts have, so thank you for that. I have a comment and a question. And the comment is that any idiot can cut a budget. It takes real competence to cut a budget without cutting service. So that's the comment. The question is this. I get that the Democrats are not in power right now, and that's a tough place to be. But I feel that you're really, not just you, but the Democrats have lost the battle of the media. I mean, today the New York Times, in 3 different sections, there are stories about the Republicans, about Trump, nothing about the Democrats at all. I don't understand why you're not out there doing stuff that's causing the media to cover you. I'm not blaming the media at this point. I'm saying you're losing the battle here because you're not out there enough so that we know what's happening.
Well, Henry, look, I hear your concerns. I don't want to answer this question defensively, but let me just tell you, the last 48 hours, I was on Bloomberg in a long interview yesterday. I was on CNN last night, and today I was going around the district and had a TV camera. Several places that I saw a TV camera in Salem, had a TV camera there with me in Gloucester. So, I'm certainly doing what I can to get out there on the media. But if you're not seeing Democrats overall, I think there's a couple of things going on. First of all, the media is very polarized. Fox doesn't take many Democrats. I'm always willing to go on Fox. Some Democrats are not willing to go on there. But the reality is, they have slanted interviews, and usually they just interview Republicans. Meantime, Democrats are just watching MSNBC. And, I've been on Rachel Maddow's show before, but, just going on a show where every person watching already agrees with you doesn't really make much of a difference. So I'm also just taking time to just get out there and meet people where they are. That's why I sat down with Gloucester fishermen today. That's why I met with all the people who make our community health centers work in Salem and Lynn this morning. That's why I actually went over and sat down with the sheriff at the Middlesex House of Corrections to understand how he's dealing with these ICE detainers and everything else, and also what he's doing to make sure that people who go to prison don't get out and just come back. So, that's some of the work that's got to go on every single day, and I'm certainly getting out there as much as I can. But thank you very much for your concern and for your question.
Thank you, sir. Just a bit ago, we asked a poll question. We asked, where do you get your news, social media or traditional media? I want to share the results with you. 24% of you shared that you get your news from social media. 76% of you said that you get your news from traditional media. Congressman, we have a question. Caitlin submitted this question. She said, what are Dems' long-term marketing plan?
Well, it's a great question because I think we need some serious work on our long-term marketing plan. And, when I came out of the gates right after the election and said, hey, Democrats need to reform, we need to change our views and some policies and whatnot and be more sensible and listen to people and not preach to them and whatnot, all these things, I got criticized by people who said, hey, this is too soon. People are still upset by the election. It's like, oh, my God, get over yourselves. We need to fix this. We need to fix ourselves in order to be ready when January comes. And guess what? We didn't do that. We weren't ready when January came around, and that's partly why we're back on our heels right now. But let me tell you what I think we need to do. First of all, we've got to accept that we've lost. We've got to come to terms with the fact that this should have been the easiest election in our history, running against a convicted felon, and we lost across the board. So the status quo is not acceptable. And these people who just say, oh, well, statistically it was very close, but it shouldn't have been close at all. So the people who say we didn't lose by much are really just saying we don't need to change, and if we don't change, we're going to keep losing. That's the first point. The second is Democrats need to listen. I hope you got a chance to look at my op-ed in the Washington Post, find it online, because I talk about the fact that a lot of people think that Democrats are just preaching. If you don't agree with me, then not only are you wrong, but you're a bad person. Well, guess what? That alienates a lot of people. That's not a good marketing plan. You don't get people to buy what you're selling by telling them that they're terrible people if they don't agree with you. So we got a lot of work to do in that department. And listening means really listening, getting out there and hearing what people have to say, what people's opinions are on these issues. At the end of the day, we've got to invite more people into our tent. That's the definition of a majority party. It means that you're not going to agree with every other Democrat on every single issue. That's okay. That's what a democracy is about. Be willing to have these debates. Don't cancel people for just bringing up contentious issues. Be willing to have the debates, listen to where Americans are, and then we're going to ultimately represent more Americans, which means we can win more elections. There's a couple other things we should do, too. We've got to show as Democrats that the government can work. When Elon Musk is just trying to tear the government apart because he says it's not efficient, we got to have a plan to actually fix the government. And I think for too long, Democrats have just been happy with the status quo. No one in the federal government needs to be fired. No one needs to work harder. I mean, there are some amazing statistics about how many people in the federal government just didn't even come to work. That's got to change. And then the final thing is,
Thank you,
I'm always about big transformational ideas. You know, we can't win just by opposing Republicans, opposing Trump. That's why I talk about high-speed rail. You know, what a difference that would make for Massachusetts. Imagine if you could get to Portland, Maine in 30 minutes, go there for dinner, come home, and go to bed. You know, in other countries you can do that, and yet you can't do that here. That's the kind of forward-looking leadership that we need in our party as well. So I hope that's helpful. I don't speak for the entire party, but that's my vision, both of how we need to reform our party so we start winning elections and how we need to carry us forward.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Patricia of South Hamilton. Patricia, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question, Patricia.
Hi, thanks for doing this evening. I have a question.
You're welcome.
I'm completely distraught about what's going on in the U.S., but I'm heartsick about Ukraine. Is there anything we can do to let Ukraine know that we stand with them despite our government's, I don't want to say policies because I don't even think it's a policy, but mayhem?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Is there anything I can do? Yes. That's why I was in Munich last weekend, to meet with our allies, to meet with the Ukrainians. We met with Zelensky, and right there, face to face, 5 feet from me across the table, I told him that you've got a table here of Democrats and Republicans from Congress who are aligned with you, who are standing with you, even while the Republican in the White House is trying to sell you out to the Russians. So that's something I'm doing. It's incredible what Ukraine has been through in the face of this brutal, illegal invasion from Putin and his cronies. And we've got to get more Republicans who know this, who understand this, who believe in our nation and our values and our allies to stand up and find the political courage to say that to the Trump administration. So, one thing you can do is talk to Republicans. You don't need to tell me. I'm doing everything I can. I appreciate it, but we really need to convince Republicans. That's what I'm doing. I'm talking to Republicans, telling them do the right thing. The third anniversary of the invasion is coming up on the 24th of February, and I think there'll be lots of solidarity events across America, and showing up at some of these. Showing members of the Ukrainian American community, many of whom still have family back in Ukraine, showing them by your presence, by your words, by your volunteer action that you stand with them. That sends an important message, because they hear from President Trump loud and clear that he's with Russia. They need to hear from so many other people in America, including Republicans, including people who voted for Trump, that we stand with Ukraine.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question is from Kelly. Kelly's from North Andover. Kelly, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, Congressman Moulton. I have a question about, with all of the changes and destruction that Trump is threatening to do to the Department of Education, what do we need to be doing at the local level to make sure that our schools don't have an impact to educational funding in the coming school year?
Yeah, sure. It was a great question. I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and school is obviously pretty much the most important thing in their lives, or just about. And we're all concerned about what these cuts could mean. I mean, he's literally talking about getting rid of the entire Department of Education. And if you talk to schools, you talk to educators, we depend on a lot of support from the Department of Education. And Massachusetts gets a lot of federal funding for our schools. By the way, so does Mississippi. In fact, in some ways, they probably depend on the Department of Education more because their schools are in worse shape. So there's a lot we can do to fight to maintain this funding, and we're gonna do that. I think we also need to make sure that we're doing everything we can at the local level to support our kids. and some of these cuts are going to be beyond our control. And I think there's a good comparison with what happened during COVID. COVID was beyond our control. We didn't want a pandemic, but it came our way. And we had a choice as to how we're going to respond. And let's be honest, a lot of schools didn't respond very well. They sent kids home. Kids suffered dramatically from their education. That was convenient for teachers, but it was really bad for our kids. And we're seeing the effects of that now. They just had another report, a report card on Massachusetts that said that Massachusetts kids are still a year and a half behind because of the pandemic. And we got to face the facts. We got to face the fact that we didn't follow the science. We didn't pay attention to the reality that kids were not dying of COVID, and we should have kept them in school longer. So let's keep our eyes wide open here. I don't know what that test will be with the funding cuts to come, but we've got to make sure that whatever we do, even if it takes more sacrifice on behalf of parents and teachers, that we're doing right by our kids. That's something that we can do every single day. There will be cuts and people who lose salaries. We're going to need more volunteers. We're going to need parents to be flexible. We don't know what's coming, but let's keep kids front and center with whatever we face. That's my advice to you.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman, we have time for one more poll question and one more call. So we're going to go ahead and ask our poll question. Folks, and we did mention this is an interactive call. We want to hear from you. Our last poll question of the evening: how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? Please press 1 on your telephone keypad if you are very concerned, 2 if you are somewhat concerned, 3 if you are not concerned at all. Again, that question is: how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? 1 if you're very concerned, 2 if you're somewhat concerned, 3 if you're not concerned at all. Congressman, your last question comes from Terry of Lynn. Terry, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead, Terry, and ask your question.
Hi there. My original question was about Medicaid, because I have a severely disabled son who is supported by Medicaid and has probably the best life that he could given the level of his disability. I get very nervous when I hear people talking about cutting Medicaid, just, all over the lot. And it's not just my son, it's a whole lot of other people that benefit from it. But I think you've already answered that question. And so one of my thoughts watching what's going on is that it's like the whole country has been under the influence of a Russian psyops operation. I mean, the memes that are being sent out by the Republicans just undermine our connection to each other and our trust in government. And boy, I don't know how you fight that.
Terry, it's a great question, and I'll answer it. But let me just first acknowledge what you said about your son and living with a great disabled American. I grew up in a family where my uncle had Down syndrome. It was one of the most important people to me in my life growing up, but someone who required and relied on some federal assistance to live the great life that he was able to live and be a positive contribution to our community. So I'm with you on that too. In terms of the Russian psyops, I mean, that literally feels like what's going on here. And you can't reach higher levels of our government than the Oval Office. When the President of the United States is repeating Russian propaganda, it's Russian propaganda that Ukraine started the war. That's what Vladimir Putin says to justify his horrific invasion. Imagine if President Franklin Roosevelt had gotten on the radio and used Hitler's talking points for his invasion of Poland. Just imagine. That's what's going on right now. And by the way, Hitler's invasion of Poland that kicked off World War II was the last major war in Europe before Ukraine, started by Vladimir Putin. That's what's at stake here. And we've got to point that out to our friends and neighbors, because you're going to hear every manner of mental gymnastics to make crazy justifications for what Trump is saying. You're going to see that on social media. You're going to see it on Fox News. You're going to hear it from friends and neighbors, well-meaning people who voted for Trump and are suddenly found trying to justify the fact that he's a traitor. Well, we got to point that out to them so that hopefully they make a better decision in the next election. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Congressman. Just before we wrap up, I just want to share the results of our last poll question. We asked you, how concerned are you that Trump's recent tariffs will raise prices for you? We had 85% of you responded very concerned, 12% responded somewhat concerned, and 3% of you responded not concerned at all. Congressman, before we wrap up the call, would you like to share your final thoughts on this evening's event, sir?
Yes, Robin, and thank you so much for all of your help in moderating this call. And thank you again to every one of you for joining. We have a ton of questions. We've saved the ones we didn't get to. That's important. If you asked a question, or you called in to ask a question, I should say, but didn't make it to the head of the line to ask it to me directly, because we have had a lot of people on this call. I'll do my best to answer more of them in the coming days. Usually I post on social media in my upcoming letters the answers to questions we didn't get to in our town hall. I'll do that again over the next week. You can subscribe to my newsletter on my website, moulton.house.gov. Again, that's MOULTON.house.gov. And I want to assure you that I'm listening to you, that I'm doing everything I can to protect the rights and freedoms of my constituents. Because at the end of the day, my team and I work for you every single day, not the other way around. We work for you. Now, some of this work will happen very publicly. I heard the point about making sure that we're out there on TV. I'm doing that. I'll continue to do that. But a lot of this work will also happen behind the scenes. And as I've been on this town hall tonight, I've been getting texts from colleagues just working to get Republican support for an issue that we're trying to deal with the Pentagon right now. I mean, that literal work is happening as we speak, and it's going to continue to go on. I know that for many of you, there are times when things can feel kind of hopeless, but we've got an amazing community here, and we'll stick together. We'll get through this. And just know that you can count on me and my team if you need any help. So reach out, contact my office anytime. The phone number is 978-531-1669. Again, 978-531-1669. But of course, you can find us on the web, moulton.house.gov. You can find us on social media, all over social media. However you need to reach out, just remember that we work for you and we're here to help. So thank you again for joining me tonight. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, Congressman. Thanks, everyone, for joining tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Seth Moulton. If you haven't spoken to a member of our staff about subscribing to the e-newsletter, please stay on the line. At the sound of the tone, spell out your name and email address slowly, please. Thank you, and have a blessed evening. Good night, everyone.